A great day to you and welcome to Timeline, the program that unpacks the issues shaping our world and where we get to profile solutions to make the world a better place. I am your host, as always, Sharon Ajay, and I have with me in the studio, as always,
Hannah Omokafe Dennis, and I'm very excited to be on this particular set with Sharon, where we get to look at problems that are facing society, but not just the problems, but we're also going to be looking at the solutions.
Quite very true. Well, today we're going to treat a topic, and permit me to say it's a topic that is a virus that affects the people and its country, and that is corruption. Now we have a guest with us to help dissect and, of course, give us deep insight on this conversation we're about to have. We'll be going on a short break, and when we return, I'll unveil our guest. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is Timeline. Now, our guest is the program's manager, anti-corruption, CISLAC. Make welcome, Bathsheba Tagwai. It's good to have you in the studio with us, ma'am.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you.
Thank you.
Well, just like I said, we'll be treating the topic corruption. As we all know, corruption is a growing global trend. It's something that it deeps not just the citizen, but of course the country also. It's something that undermines the development of a country. And that brings us to the question, and of course this conversation we're about to have, why is it that there are some countries that are more corrupt than other countries? What are the practices that these countries that are not so corrupt do that the countries that are overly corrupt do not do? Now, to give a context to that, the Transparency International rates countries based from 0 to 100. Now, 0 ultimately means highly corrupt, and 100 meaning, not corrupt at all. And their report states that below 50, lots of country, their index is below 50, automatically meaning that we have lots of most countries that are corrupt. And that is why we're having this conversation. Why is it so?
That's very right, Sharon, because if you want to take a look at corruption, you'll be able to understand globally that corruption is a phenomenon that crosses across borders, across political systems, across economic development levels. It doesn't matter if this country has high rates of development or has a low rate of development. It transcends across everywhere. So we can find several forms or several examples of corruptions in their practices. And that's the reason, of course, why we have our experts right here who talk about everything that transcends corruption, the forms, the solutions, and how we can go further from that.
Yeah. Now, Bathsheba, I would like us to start from the basics. What is your definition of corruption beyond the normal description that would, of course, target?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. Let me formally just introduce myself and my organization. My name is Bathsheba Tagwai, and I work for CISLAC, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, which is also Transparency International Nigeria. Transparency International, of course, is the global anti-corruption organization, and it has chapters across over 100 countries in the world. And our organization, CISLAC, is Transparency International Nigeria. So I feel I had to mention that because you were mentioning the results from our Corruption Perception Index. Yeah. So back to the discussion now. Yeah. So corruption, as defined by Transparency International, is the misuse, or abuse of entrusted power, for personal gain. And that summarizes basically what corruption is. And we have different forms of corruption. So we have the petty corruption and we have grand corruption, right? So first of all, to the definition, when you have been entrusted with power, as a public official or even in your place of work, and you then, because that power has been given to you as a responsibility, you understand, to play certain roles that will impact whether it's your office, it's your school, it's the organization you work in, or as a public official now, Nigerians that you're there to serve. And you decide to use that power now, to just for your own gain. for personal gain. That is corruption. You're abusing that power, you know. And so we have petty corruption like bribery, you know, nepotism, you know, and all of that. Then you have the grand corruption, and here we're talking about illicit financial flows. We're talking about money laundering. We're talking about, you know, those huge kinds of corruption that now impact the generality of people, that impacts the nation, the economy, the development, you know, of a country. But the petty corruption are the ones that happen day to day in our daily lives. You know, you're, you know, trying to, you know, even maybe exam malpractice, all of those things, you know. So those are the categories of corruption. You have the petty corruption and you have the grand corruption, and all have a very negative impact on whether it's the society in general or the people that are directly impacted by it, whether it's individual that has to pay a bribe to get medical healthcare service, or you need to pay a bribe to get admission into school, even though you have all the criteria, you understand. And we see it happening across the world, and even especially, let's bring it to our country, Nigeria, that it's so difficult because of corruption for an individual, even with all the requirements, you know, from your WAEC, from your JAMB, and from, you know, all the necessary exams you've written. It's so difficult to get admission into certain schools. You know, you'd have to know someone. It's not supposed to be that way, you know. Then you have people who do not merit some of these admissions or positions. You see them getting it. Why? Because they know somebody somewhere that has been able to use their power and their influence to get them that position or that job or that admission. That's nepotism. You know, you have policemen sometimes on the road. That is a very common thing across Nigeria, and many citizens have complained, who ask motorists, you know, for bribes, 20,000, 20 naira, 50 naira, 100 naira, you know. So, and then we also have people that require you to pay bribe just for basic services. Basic services. You go to a public office, you need to get something done. And instead of the officer there to just do their job and get that thing done, you're required to pay a bribe or sort this one or sort that one for things to move. All these things contribute to, you know, the high rate of corruption in a society. Talk about contracts.
Yeah.
You know, we have business people that complain every time that sometimes they need to pay. Like, why can't it just be that I submit my documents to bid for a contract, and then I get it fair and square, meritoriously? But it doesn't happen. There's a lot of corruption even in the procurement sector, you know, and all of that. A lot of contractors say you have to know somebody, meet this or do this before you're able to even secure a contract, you know, and all of that. So all these are very negative practices that...
Exactly. I don't think it's just an African problem. I think it's a global problem because just recently a US senator was convicted for bribery, in the sense that he was using his power. You know, when you were defining corruption, you said that corruption is the misuse of entrusted power. Now he was entrusted with the senatorial seat, and he used that power to, you know, favor countries that were able to bribe him, just so that he puts them in a very good light that they can be able to gain favor from the US. And we know that the US is a world power, a country that people like to gain favors from. And if you can be able to gain a senator who you can bribe him, they bribed him with gold. Allegedly, he was bribed with gold in cars, luxury gifts, and everything. And he was found, he was accused, and recently now he has been, you know, convicted. He's going to spend 11 years in prison because of that. So when it comes to corruption, we see that corruption doesn't just come in Nigeria or in Africa, but even in countries that are already developed. Like I said in my introduction, it's not just a phenomenon that is what's the word to use now?
Limited.
Yes, that is limited to Nigeria alone or limited to Africa, but it's something that transcends across political systems and across economic development levels.
Exactly, Anna. So it's not just a Nigerian or an African problem. It's a global problem. And of course, we're in Nigeria, we're Nigerians. And so that's why, despite saying it's global and Nigeria, I had to narrow it down to Nigeria, because that is what we can relate, something we can relate to, and all of that. But what makes it very, what makes the corruption in Africa, you know, stand out so badly, especially in the Corruption Perception Index, you'd want to ask yourself, what are other countries doing, especially, the Western world, that African countries are not doing? I'll tell you, number one, you just mentioned that he's going to jail. How many politically exposed persons in Nigeria have you seen go to jail for corruption? So one big issue that we have in Africa is the lack of punitive measures for acts of corruption. Yes, we see, the ordinary citizen go to prison every day, for one criminal offense or the other, or for even corruption. But how many politically exposed persons have we seen being convicted, for corruption? You can decide to mention a few now, but recently, some people were given presidential pardon, for very serious offenses. So until we have a system in place that really punishes anyone found guilty of acts of corruption, irrespective of position, irrespective of class, irrespective of tribe, religion, whatever, that that if you are caught, if you are found guilty, you will be punished. Until that happens, we will continue to see what is happening, currently that we're complaining about, because a lot of people feel once I have the money, once I'm up there, I can do whatever. And the likelihood of me getting away with it is very, very high. And so it's discouraging even to the anti-corruption institutions or even the citizens, because, it's like different yardsticks for different people. And so that is a huge challenge. And then we have very, very fantastic laws. Nigeria, the problem in Nigeria is not laws. We have so many laws, fantastic laws. We are signatories to so many international treaties. But the problem is, how are we effectively implementing these laws? Because if you read these laws, if you go through them, you would see that if we would follow this law, the way it is written, the way it's supposed to be, we would be in a maybe near perfect society. So the problem again, the second problem is the ineffective implementation of some of our laws that are supposed to put us in check, and all of that. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the cultural factor. You made mention of some things. You talked about settling and all of that. And that's why I made reference to the fact that, most Africans do that. It's now like a cultural tolerance, something you now see as a norm, because that's what I was trying to say. So how does this cultural factor plays in, pushing corruption or, making a country more corrupt? What part does it play, this cultural factor?
No, it plays a very huge part. It plays a very huge role. Okay. Huge role. In fact, I feel like in Nigeria and also some parts of Africa, there's this culture of impunity. And so sometimes it's like when you're doing the right thing, you are like in the minority. And then the wrong thing becomes like a norm. And that goes back again because over time, people have not been punished, for doing the wrong thing. So, it has encouraged others to be like, oh, well, so it makes it like a normal thing. Well, this person did it and nothing happened. This person did it, nothing happened. So why not? I would also do it. And so you see over time, we begin to normalize, what is wrong, because everybody is doing it. And so if everybody is doing it, why not? And all that. So until people are punished, for acts of corruption, for criminality, you continue to see some of these things become like a norm, so you will just eventually give in because you feel, even if I report, what will happen? Do you understand? Yeah. And that is because over time, people have not been punished. And so you just feel, let me just do it and just get what I want and go. It's not my business. You understand? Yeah. And like you said, poverty plays a huge role as well, and poverty is also as a result of corruption, because when resources, funds that are meant to be used to develop society, to provide the basic services for citizens are diverted for personal use and personal gains, you'll find a situation where you don't have enough healthcare system. The education system is whack. You understand? Basic services, roads are bad. You don't have power supply, water, like the basic, people don't have it. And so when you're poor, when you're in need, when you're poor and you're desperate, at that point, you just want to eat. You just want to get, whatever it is that you desire at that moment. You don't care the means, because really there's no other way for you. It devalues you. It dehumanizes you. You actually lose your sense of self-worth. So at that point, look, you don't care. What are we going to rob somebody? It doesn't make it right. But that is what poverty does to a people. And you also see sometimes poverty making people to also put undue pressure on their family members, on their friends that are in public office. Because why do you think families, communities celebrates when their son or their daughter gets appointment into government or something? You're already happy because you know that poverty has finally left our family. Do you understand? Scheme. You are not saying that it's service. It's not like you go and do Thanksgiving and all of that, because you know what you're saying is how can my brother be minister? And then, and that is undue pressure on that person. So they complain. You get different calls from friends, from relatives, from their village people. We want this. My daughter is getting married. My son wants to go to school and all of that. That is what poverty does. Yeah. Do you understand? Because first of all, they don't even have access to some of these things. So now that their brother is there, it's an opportunity for their own poverty to be alleviated. And so that person is under so much pressure, which can push him or her to now begin to steal and embezzle.
Thank you, Bathsheba. We'll have to go on a break now.
All right.
We'll be going on a short break now, and when we return, More Cafe will take us through the social commentary. Stay with us.
Culture connects us beyond borders. It's a bridge between traditions, creativity, and the future.
Culture is alive, shaping identities and communities every day.
Art tells stories of resilience and vision.
Artists blend tradition with innovation.
Cultural preservation creates sustainability and empowerment.
Culture evolves and adapts.
Music and dance unites communities through movement.
And right here, in the heart of our cities, artists and creators are keeping these cultures alive.
On Culture Cove, let's explore,
celebrate, and preserve the arts and culture that define us.
Welcome back. This is Timeline on More Cafe. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. So it's been an interesting conversation with Bathsheba here, and of course, you looking at corruption from several angles, from several countries in Africa, in the US, across continents and everything, and we have been able to understand the several roles in which corruption can play. And one striking form that Bathsheba here had mentioned is the fact that it can lead to so many things. The fact is that when corruption leads to so many things, the several benefits that's supposed to come out of that practices is not given to them. And that's why we're going to be looking at some of the social commentaries that have been done from people across the world, including Nigeria, of course. And what are they saying about it? Now, this one is from Rodolfo Medrano. Says that the most pitiful situation is that we can feel in our bones the most despicable and worst level of corruption committed by the people running our government. Yet our gods also tell us that none of them will be severely punished for their malfeasance. You can imagine. So this is saying that this is that point you made where you said that people have lost a sense of trust for public offices or for public officers. This particular tweet here just it says that. So let's move on to the next. Says that Perm Seeker says, since 2000, the world's richest 1% has taken 41% of new wealth. The poorest half has received only 1%, reached by political parties, media, means of production, cost corruption, climate crisis, poor die early, choice, redistribution, or social disorder. What do you think about this tweet?
I completely agree with the tweet that something needs to be done, right? Something urgently needs to be done, because really he's very true. He's very correct. Even the media now has been kind of infiltrated, and it's how will I say it now? Of course, there are some media outlets that are really trying to maintain their integrity.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Maintain their integrity and really put out things that are the truth. However, there's also a fear of reprisal. There are whistleblowers that have been killed. There are whistleblowers that have been intimidated, that have been attacked. And our media are also some whistleblowers, because sometimes they put out there certain things that are happening. They bring to our notice, acts of corruption, or they reveal a lot of things. And sometimes there are stories of journalists that have been detained, journalists have been killed across the world, now not Nigeria, across the world, journalists have been killed, whistleblowers have been attacked. These are human rights violations, all in the bid to cover acts of corruption. So something definitely needs to be done. I don't know about social disorder, but something definitely needs to be done, because two wrongs don't make a right, but definitely. Something definitely needs to be done.
Now let's look at our last tweet before we move on to the next. Okay, this one is our last. It says from Peter Cornell: behind diplomatic smiles and constricting treaties, it is by theft, bribery, threats, corruption, trickery, gullibility, and dare say it, treachery that have combined to drain Australia's hundreds of billions of wealth off largely into the pockets of foreign shareholders, investors, leaders, and shysters. This is what Australia was stopped from doing. And since the mid-90s, Norway has imposed a 56% special tax for oil and gas companies, alongside a 22% corporate tax rate. The proceeds from the tax have been reinvested in its sovereign wealth fund, which is now the largest in the world. Now, Australia, despite near equivalent resources, is a lowly 16th globally, with just 1/10 of what the little country of Norway has collected. This just emphasizes on the everything that we've been saying so far.
Yeah, so we'll be wrapping up right now. Of course, we have to fall back to the solutions of what can we do to, of course, eradicate corruption? And just to just give a context to that, we see that, just like I stated, there are countries that are rated low when it comes to corruption. But they are not void from corruption, right? Because we see that other countries that are highly corrupted would still have some offshore accounts in those countries whereby they get to buy luxurious items, real estate, and all of that. And those countries are bounded by secrecy rules that says you must not unveil or reveal wherever your buyer is. Now, we talked about media playing a pivotal role, right? Now, when media goes around to want to do their investigation to know, okay, how has this money been spent along of that? Because of the secrecy bound by those countries, the EU, I think in partnership also with the Transparency International, have dropped the sixth anti-corruption rule, stating that none of those countries should cover, or there should not be any secrecy bound by whoever, buys luxurious items in those countries. And I think that is also, a step to unveiling some corrupt practices. Now, over to you in just a minute or two, just tell us some solutions to unveil some corrupt practices and how we can totally eradicate corruption from each country.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly start with the point you made. And if you remember when I was talking about ground corruption, I talked about illicit financial flows, money laundering, and all of that. And I don't know if you have studied or if you've been keeping up, you would know that international cooperation has greatly helped Nigeria in recovering a lot of the looted assets and funds that have been siphoned to some of these developed countries. We call them tax havens. We call them destination countries. Was it the Abacha loot?
Yeah.
In January this year, we had the Desiani loot as well. That was returned to Nigeria. As a result of the international cooperation between the Nigerian government and the US government. Nigeria and France have also had quite a lot of engagements, around asset recovery, and all of that. TI Nigeria and TI France have also done quite a lot of advocacy around that. So that is the core of the work that we do, asset recovery. And so that's why I'm telling you that international cooperation is the number one solution, and it has greatly helped. And Nigeria is benefiting from that. If not for international cooperation, we would not have been able to recover some of those assets that had been taken to other countries by some of our politically exposed persons. International cooperation has also helped for the repatriation, help with repatriation of some people who were, involved in corrupt practices on the other side to be brought back to Nigeria. And that is a solution that I feel like should continue because it goes a long way, because we have assets that are going to other countries, and you need to cooperate, you need to really come together, because all the countries of the world are talking about anti-corruption, fighting corruption. Yeah. And so we need to put words into action, exactly. and that's what's happening. Then I'll talk about value reorientation as well. Okay. As citizens, the citizens, especially those at the grassroots, we need constant education and reorientation, because we talk about how there's a culture of impunity. So people need to understand that corruption is wrong. We need to shun acts of corruption, and all of that, and reports. Amazing. Thank you so much, Bathsheba. This was quite an insightful conversation. And remember, I stated that if we should talk about corruption, we have, it's a vast conversation.
Yeah, I think 30 minutes is too small.
Of course it is. But thank you once again.
Thank you.
It was great having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
That's where we draw the line on Timeline. I remain your host, Sharna J.
And I'm Hannah Omokafe-Dennis. If there's anything you're gaining from this, be transparent and, of course, allow your values to be reoriented so we have a free corruption country.
Until next time, see you again.